In this video, I read all the Big Nate books. Part 2! Welcome to part 2 of this amazing series. Last episode, I read all of the comic books in this series, but this time, in this part, I am going to read all the novels. You guys really liked the last one, which, by the way, if you haven't watched the last one, you should go do that. There's only 8, so it won't be as soul-crushing or as sleep-crushing as the last part. This part will be more subjective and will be more about what I thought of these books instead of like stats and stuff. It's the first time that I've really looked in depth about these books. Anyways, this video took a lot of time. 2 hours of reading, 3 hours of scripting and recording, 5 of editing. If you could hit the sub or like button or anything, it would help me stay motivated. Anyways, let's get on with the video. The first book in this series is of course In Class by Himself, or in Britain, The Boy with the Biggest Head in the What the heck were they thinking when they made that name? Well, I guess I kind of get it, because Nate does have a big head. Well, for my sanity, I'm just going to call it In Class by Himself. This book wasn't my favorite, to be honest, as the plot's kind of dry and repetitive, and there isn't much arc. This is mostly because Nate doesn't develop, as in most of the great books, you see Nate develop as a character, or you see him learn something. In this book, his shallowness and ignorance is highlighted, so he feels more like Greg from Wimpy Kid. This all culminates into an incomplete ending, which felt a little airy and didn't have much to make you feel like you read a good book. Overall, it's still the first book, so I'll cut it some slack, and I'll give it a 5 out of 10. The next book, Strikes Out, begins with one of the best openings in Big Nate history, with a setup of the protagonists, the antagonists, and all of their motives, feelings towards each other, and the history of their rivalry. The humiliation that Nate feels brings him down. It sets up the rest of the book in an easy and timely manner. The rest of the book is Moi, chef's keys, les Français. The ending is one of the best in the whole series, with all plot lines converging nicely, using each other as supports to help them be lifted into the air and be as good as possible. The twist that Nate helps on the project and Gina wins the game are also a good plot pair. The grade I'll give it is 9 out of 10. On a roll, the third book in the series was What the Heck Is This Thing? This is like as if YouTube Rewind had a child with a knockoff of Garfield. This is one of the worst books in the series. Heck, it would be disrespectful to say that any other book in this amazing series comes close to the level of excrement that this book deposits on the Big Nate brand. Why is this? Well, from the start, we know this is just going to be Nate hating on Arthur for the whole book, and isn't that everybody's favorite thing to read in the story? A nice character being hated on by a shallow, weird Nate. There's no defined protagonist and antagonist, as Nate is being so horrible, you don't really want to root for him. But Arthur is only a side character, so you don't really want to root for him, or you don't really care to root for him. And, I mean, the book is supposed to make you feel like you're supposed to be rooting for Nate. And just a lot of weird breaking of the fourth wall. Maybe it was just me not noticing the other ones, but he keeps on looking towards the camera, or I guess the reader, in some of the comic images kind of thingies. Nate treats Jenny like a possession, which is, again, another big plotline for some reason, and I hate that plotline. It makes me so mad. Like, why? Just stop. Some notes that I took were, get me out of this book. I could sleep. Why don't I just sleep? I am banging my head on the headrest. Okay, good. I'm done with this book. It's flaming trash. And he doesn't even win outright. He was just lucky. Score 1 out of 10. What do you expect? The next book in the series, Goes for Broke, gets the series back on track, thank goodness. The opening is a tad bit dry, but still pretty good. It sets up some of the important side characters and comes up a lot in the book. I don't really know why they had to do the dance, except for Dee Dee getting into the comic club, which is a very, very minor detail, but it kind of feels like a filler part, just to take up some room. Climax is one of the best, though, as it's satisfying. The clearly defined protagonist wins and the clearly defined antagonist is defeated. Hear that on a roll? I'll give it 7 out of 10. It's a pretty good book. Flips Out was a very good book, as it shows the friendship between Francis and Nate well. And as we don't see that much opposition between them in the whole series, except for like a few panels of them just fighting, which are like one-offs every once in a while, there isn't a clear antagonist, and I like that because there should be more about Nate and Francis, but there are random antagonists that come along, as in Gina and Randy and Nick, which are very unneeded in my opinion. They just are trying to butt in Gina and Randy, which is another pattern that you'll see for the rest of the book. They really try and get Gina, Randy, and Nick just in there, just to like spice up the action or something. The next book, or I'll give it a 7 out of 10. The next book, In the Zone, was one of the best books in the series because of how well it manages its plot. I like that Chad is a big part of this book because it is nice to see it's nice to see him as a big part of the book. The Trail of Unluckiness is one of the best plot lines because it is comical of how hard of a time Nate has and sets him up for glory in the next part, so that it feels deserved since he went through the trials of having bad luck. The next part is satisfying, as it is nice to see him actually succeed in something. It is also satisfying along with the ending, and ends Chad and Maya's arc up well, and it kind of links it with the Nate and Marcus plot too. I like how well in all of these books they kind of loop up the two plot lines that they have going. Usually they have like two plot lines going, and I like how they link them up or just connect them well. The only thing I don't like about this book is how Marcus kind of felt more like a popular version of Randy. It was basically just a Randy knockoff to make it sound like to the reader that, yeah, we're not using Randy for this book, we're using Marcus. He's new, yeah. Just, there's been a lot of Randy in these books, and I think they wanted to spice it up a little bit, use a different character. I'll give this book an 8 out of 10. It was a very good book. I actually really liked it. I didn't take much or many notes on Lives It Up. It's a good book, as Brecken is a new character, someone that we haven't seen before and don't see except for one panel in Blasts Off. I loved the part where Nate ran in to try and save Brecken, which really shows the good parts of his character and the other heroic, kind of very selfless part of his character. The ending ties up everything well, except for the whole Brecken and Nate plot is already done, so it's basically just trying to beat out Randy and Gina. What'd I say? Randy and Gina are back. Goodness. And the whole, scavenger hunt is basically just the factoid thingy, but just in a different format. So I'll give it a 7.5. It wasn't the best in the series, but it did have a nice original plot, I think. On to Blast Off, which is the greatest book of all time. What a book. It's amazing how great this book is. It is the most emotional, clearly thought out, and original book in this series. The protagonist goes through the most turmoil in the whole book, from fighting with Randy to thinking that he's going to move. Shows development and the not often exposed scared and weak part of Nate. Really, the antagonist shows us his other side too, showing that he has a divorce going between his parents and his pretty much depression. I would say that he seems pretty depressed. It shows that he channels his anger into being a bully. So you kind of feel sad for Randy, which I think is one of the better parts of the book. It is just really amazing to take a character that nobody likes and put him into a frame that everybody has to like. I loved the part where Nate and Randy meet up and they win the Mud Bowl because it converges their arcs together, and it converges them into friends, I guess. They were kind of friends. Ruby is a good character, and it is refreshing to see that Nate can actually get a girlfriend. We're proud of you, Nate. Okay, we've been with you for so long. We're so very proud of you. We don't ever hear what happened to Randy, which is a part that I don't really like, because I would really like to see what happened to Randy after, like what happened to... The Weekly Bugle is new and original and only ever comes up in the comic books a few times, and is a very big part of the storyline. The only regret I have about this book is, since it is the last book, we never see Ruby ever again in the comic books, or basically anywhere. We also never see what happened to Randy. We never see what happened with his divorce, or his parents' divorce, and we never see what happens to him. In the comic books, at least. This leads me on to my theory that every comic book is in a different multiverse. A leading multiverse theory is quantum multiverses. This theory is that for every action done, a new multiverse opens. The original branch keeps on going, never aware that the other branch has ever happened. We might be in a multiverse right now, and the other us's are doing things in another universe slightly different than us, unaware of our presence. There are infinity amount of multiverses out there, because there have been infinity actions that have been committed. I think that every comic book is another iteration of a multiverse. This basically means that for every comic book, there's a new multiverse that we're exploring, or a new iteration of the multiverse. The Big Nate multiverse. This theory solves the problem of why there are so many years in the series, like why they go through 6th grade like 100 times. The book series is also the story of one multiverse, I think, as it seems to be only one school year, and the characters don't change up or anything. I think it is probably just one multiverse. Anyways, I'm sorry, sorry my stomach. Anyways, I think that Blast Off deserves a score of 10 out of 10, and for the whole book series, I think, what would I give it? Well, my heart says 10 out of 10, but, like, actually, I'd probably say 8 out of 10 for the whole book series, just because there was a little bit, I think, since it was a comic book, he had trouble forging the line between comic and book, like, trying to develop the character, but also make it comical enough, that the development seems a little bit comical, and I think that's why I liked Blast Off so much, because it really does that well. Anyways, that's the end of the video, so make sure to like and subscribe. Comment down below what was your favorite Big Nate book, and I will see you later in the next video. See ya!